Never know when it actually started, but let's say that it started. Hey, everybody. It's Tuesday, the 24th of October, 2023. This is Gimbalabs Playground from Gimbalabs and Friends. We've been doing this for about 3 years, getting together every Tuesday to make sense of ideas and figure stuff out together. We have a kind of unique session today, talking about some early work we've been doing with a program called Mesh PBL. So we'll tell you a little bit about that program. And then, like we always try to do at Playground, we'll dive a little bit into some details, because sometimes when we dive in a little bit, we might notice some things together and surface some new questions that we want to be asking. Before we do that, I'm going to share my screen for just a moment. Before we went live, we were sharing just some stories. A lot of us here have been spending time together over the years. But I just want to shout out everybody who's here. Nick, Regis, I know we haven't spent long enough together to have a whole bunch of stories yet, but really glad you're here and excited to see if you guys have any questions today. On my screen is the Gimbalabs Playground Miro board. This is a new one for season 3. It's linked in the chat and at gimbalabs.com/playground. And we don't have everything we used to have. We no longer have those community cards or the circle for sitting in. We were just talking about those. And that really is just because of a lack of time to get everything done. And so really, truly, I would love to have help building some of those systems back in if anybody wants to. Don't even ask for permission. That's what this session here is all about. Here's how you sign up. There's a chart on this Miro board. There's some empty slots on it. For example, the next one is on November 7th. And then we have a whole bunch of openings going into the first half of 2024. So how do you sign up for one of these sessions? You just come to this Miro board and you add your name to the list. That's all. Once you do that, you're officially scheduled to present. What can you present at Playground? The agenda usually looks like this. We spend a few minutes just catching up, shooting the breeze, maybe doing a little walk down memory lane like we did today. And usually by about quarter after the hour, we try to get into that week's presentation and discussion. Sometimes the presentation really does take the form of a standard share out from the presenter, and other times it tends more towards discussion. Often it tends towards both. So you can do any or all of these. You could pitch a product you're working on. You could share an idea that's in the very early stages and ask for feedback. You can start a conversation about something you've been thinking about, like, is wallet the right word to describe the thing that we use to interact with the blockchain? That was one of our early Playground sessions. Often, if you're like other presenters, you'll share some combination of the above. And that's really what we hope to do today. Just tell everybody a little bit about what's going on with Mesh PBL, then jump into some of the technical details of how that looks in practice before opening up a bigger conversation about this planning structure and what we might learn from some of the elements. But more on that when we get there. Does anybody have any questions about Playground in general before we jump into today's session? All right. Thanks for being here. Maybe, Felix, should I put Mesh on the screen for just a moment for anybody who is unaware of it, just so we have a little bit of context, and then we can hand it off to you?
Definitely.
Let's do that. I'm just going to pull up the Mesh website. It's at meshjs.dev, and you can see it here.
I think you need to zoom out a little bit. Yeah, there
we go. That's better. All right, so Mesh, it is a library that allows JavaScript, TypeScript, React developers to interact with Cardano in the applications they're building. You can navigate the site across the top bar. There's a bunch of guides already published. and then interactive documentation. It's a really cool site. You actually don't have to be a developer to play with some of what Mesh can do. If you have a wallet in your browser, for example, you can just connect it to the screen. And you can see, in this case, I have some test data here, right? And you can run different code snippets without even writing code. This is not the end use case for Mesh. The web page we're looking at right now is just built with Mesh, and it shows the documentation. But the real end goal of using it is to import it into your projects and to be able to call functions like these so that you can build a real application. Any questions about what Mesh is before we keep going? If we do this session right, maybe you'll have some further questions by the end of the day. But the reason we're here today and what we want to present on is that we're working on what we are calling Mesh Project-Based Learning, or the Mesh PBL course. And this is the result of a Catalyst Fund 10 proposal. And Felix, is it okay if I hand it off to you to share a little bit about how we launched this collaboration?
Definitely.
Hey.
Definitely. Then first already, because we really stick to this promise here in the circle to what Catalyst promoted in the early days, to explore the highest potential of human collaboration. And very often using proposals as a trigger and enabler to collaborate actually across projects and people. It became something else, that's fine, but we still stick to this ethos, I would say. And with MeshJS, we submitted a proposal in front end, as James mentioned already. And the most important thing to mention actually why this collaboration takes place, because MeshJS and Gimbalabs have very similar goals. Help people to build on the Cardano blockchain, ideally with a very strong commitment to open source, tools, libraries, whatever in this regard. And MeshJS is very inspired by Gimbalabs. It's a much younger project than Gimbalabs. And what Gimbalabs bootstrapped over the last years to not only build tools and projects, but also to build a whole developer community and actually onboard people from zero to actually building stuff. This was really a main inspiration. And our whole proposal in MeshJS really focuses on this actually. Building up a developer community around MeshJS and helping them to create content. And we said then, okay, so when we are already that much inspired by Gimbalabs, let's go with a Gimbalabs PBL then actually in this regard as well. So with a MeshJS Mesh PBL, which has the main purpose really to have a very structured and formatted roadmap and say, how can people start to engage? How can they build up their knowledge, experience, and expertise? And ideally manifesting this gained experience and knowledge into building their own projects on the Cardano blockchain. And then Gimbalabs as a sort of incubator, I would call it, even because in Gimbalabs a lot of beautiful projects and collaborations have been formed over the last year. Andamio emerged as well, which is a learning management system. We said, hey, why not using this framework already on creating a really much more performed process, actually in this regard, on, once again, onboarding people, educating people, and empowering people then to build their own projects on the Cardano blockchain. So when all this nicely came together by time, said, okay, let's join forces. There's a massive overlap already in MeshJS community members and Gimbalabs community members. People are very often engaged in both projects there to say, okay, how can we leverage already in supporting people, but also leverage on a more closer collaboration between MeshJS as project and Gimbalabs, because the vision is very aligned, the mission is very aligned, and it makes only sense to work together actually on this regard. And from this point then, we said as well, hey, cool. Ideally, we want to have a monthly report and direct feedback with the community as well, with people who start to engage. And why not using the Gimbalabs Playground then? Because we don't have to set up a whole own event format and structure with MeshJS. Let's collaborate with the spaces which exist already with Gimbalabs. And that's what we're doing today. So giving some updates on the previous progress already, some insights on what has been done so far, and then ideally opening up, getting questions in, answering them, and ideally giving some comfortability for people to engage. I hope did it nail this? Maybe it was even a little bit too much.
So helpful. Made sense to me. Who has questions for Felix? Newman, to your question in the chat, yeah, that's the proposal.
Okay.
Thank you for that link.
Cool. Yeah.
Does this require previous knowledge of programming, or this is like really from zero to somewhere?
Excellent. Okay, that's a great question. Mesh will be most useful to developers who already have some experience with JavaScript or TypeScript, and even more helpful if you have a little bit of React experience, but that's not required. It'll work with any JavaScript framework, but there's also some provided tooling to help React developers get started quickly. That said, the guides that are already up at the MeshJS website can take somebody through from the very beginning. It'll show you how to set up a project from scratch and then how to add mesh to it and see a result. And that's one of the experiences that students are going to have in the very first lessons of the course we're building. With all of that said, there is some prerequisite knowledge. Let's say maybe you've never touched JavaScript before. A lot of that knowledge is touched on in our Plutus PBL course. So one thing we recognize is that if somebody decides they really want to learn Mesh, often one of the things that drives us to learn things, right, is that we find out what we don't know, right? I can't seek a course in something that I've never heard about before. I don't know to look for that course about that thing, right? And so often when we dive into any discipline, and I think software development is high on this list, we're bound to discover the things that we are actually interested in. I might think I want to be a Plutus developer, for example, and then I start learning Plutus and I find out, oh, I actually really like UI design. And that's not in the scope of Plutus, right? But by dipping my toes into building smart contracts or decentralized applications, I might find out that there's this other thing that really lights me up. So it's kind of interesting to think in those regards. Now, you can always backtrack further. There's always more prerequisites that we need to cover. And I think this project is going to help us discover more of those. And so we might realize that there's additional prerequisites that we want to teach about. And I think it's on all of us, this network we're building, to start looking at, okay, how are we going to incentivize the creation of these prerequisite materials, right? Who's going to build them? And can we make that a job, and can we put a value on it so that somebody can start to make a sustainable living from that? You thought it was a simple question, Tavo. Sorry, I told you all the implications.
Yeah, I have another one, but I'm browsing already milestones. So I guess it's a no, but maybe there is something hidden. Like when these people take a course, are they going to build something that is kind of prepared? Like, hey, let's try a text, or let's try, I don't know, some swapping, or like whatever comes, what you can do in smart contracts. Or it's more like modular, where you just, hey, do you learn this thing, you learn this thing, but how do you combine it? It's all up to you.
Also a great question. And we'll dive more into that one, but at a high level, The goal is for this to be a project-based learning course. We really do want people doing things. I think it's likely that there will be some kind of capstone project at the end. And this is one of the things we've been talking about with the team that's come together to start planning this thing is what is our primary goal? Because there's two that might have approximately equal emphasis. One of our goals is just to help developers building anything know how to use the Mesh tool, right? Put that tool in their toolbox and now build utility with it. But another outcome of this course is to onboard new contributors to Mesh, the open source project. I'm in category 1 myself right now. I use Mesh daily for an application that I'm building. But I also, because I'm doing that, I see very clearly the limitations of Mesh. And our team is very aware of a couple of things it doesn't do yet, but all of those are things that can be added to the library, right? So by being a builder, I prepare myself to become a contributor. And really, we want to try to hit that sweet spot where we're achieving both goals at once. These
Maybe it's really
are not loading for me. Oh, there they are. Okay. Go ahead, Felix. Sorry.
I would say also, Tivo, to your question, it's mainly really just providing all the stack that people can do both, what James mentioned. Build new projects, whatever they want, but we can make sure they can do so because they have everything what they need, or contribute to already existing stuff. For example, MeshJS, there are a lot of guides, tutorials already there, which need to be updated, for example, and really providing there's two ways around. And ideally then, like James mentioned, builders can become contributors and contributors can become builders. And we don't want to restrict people in one category only. They should be free and empowered to do either one or both, however they see fit for themselves the best. And our job is just making sure they have everything they need to do so.
Mm-hmm. We should be clear about one more thing up front too. When you start diving into Cardano development, you start to learn the distinction between on-chain code and off-chain code. And typically what we're talking about with on-chain code are the smart contracts themselves, the Plutus validators that gate whether or not different transactions can happen. The off-chain code is everything that helps us build a UI and consistently build the sorts of transactions we want to in order to interact with the smart contracts that we've built that operate on-chain. So you've got your on-chain and your off-chain. On-chain, an example of that, like I just said, is Plutus. Other examples for on-chain code include Aiken or Helios or Option or Plutus, and the list can go on. Mesh is an example of an off-chain library. You can't write actual smart contracts in Mesh, but you can build the web-based application to interact with those smart contracts after you've built them. Does that make sense, or does that raise questions for anybody?
But the smart contracts have to be coded in Plutus, James.
Plutus or Aiken or Helios, or if you've heard of other smart contract languages on Cardano, yeah, you write those first, and then you build an application that actually uses those smart contracts.
Right, thanks.
And our Plutus PBL course is just a survey of kind of both of those. So what we've already been doing is taking people through some of the prerequisite knowledge they need just to move into both of those fields, right? On-chain and off-chain code. before you can do those, obviously you have to know what a wallet is. You have to be able to work a Cardano wallet, right? But you also have to build up a couple of mental models. What really is a Cardano transaction, right? And how do these inputs and outputs to a transaction work? So we try to put this UTXO model in front of people so they can start to play with it. But then after we do that, we start dipping our toes a little bit into writing some validators in Plutus and a little bit into building off-chain code. And one of the examples we use is Mesh.
When does the onboarding start? Like, where is it, or is it a deadline, or is it like constant, like some people are 1 month ahead and then it's people can still join, or is it like cohort based?
Excellent. Are you asking for Mesh or in general?
Mesh.
Yeah, good question. We haven't come up with a final decision on that yet. But I think the default for a lot of these courses is for them to be able to be used asynchronously. Right. After we finish building this course, it's going to serve as some live documentation that people can work through at their own pace. But we also have learned from hosting other PBL courses in the past that it can be really helpful to be moving through a course with a cohort, right? To know that, hey, over these number of weeks, me and some other people, we're going to be working on the same things together.
I'm asking it because then the follow-up question is like, who are already kind of invited and who could be on board more? Because my mind goes, okay, I know engineers, I know who are studying, who have projects, and like they need to create like a PhD thesis or something, and like that would be a perfect case to learn about it and actually build the deliverable without having to do the research themselves so deeply because it's packaged. Because I feel like your work do quite good work in here. But if we are giving it out to somebody who doesn't know about Cardano, but he knows about like Ethereum, smart contract stuff, and would be interested in something similar. But if it's just an offline course, I think that could be like a barrier a bit, like, oh, but if I have questions, where can I go? And who could I share? And if I put the projects, can I do it together with somebody? And questions like that.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I don't believe that it's possible to build an asynchronous course that works for everybody. A lot of people, no matter how good your material might be, and we don't even know if our material is going to be good yet. We'll look at that in a second, right? But let's say it's as good as we can get it. There's still people who want to spend some time together. They need to ask questions face to face. It helps to collaborate in a live setting. So we've been running what we call live coding for Plutus PBL. It's a little bit similar to Playground. It meets consistently. This one meets twice a week. But it just makes that space for anybody who's working through a course to come and talk about something together. And we're going to use some of those existing sessions, just like we're using Playground, to do some reporting and discussing with the community right now. We're going to use some of our existing live coding sessions to run special Mesh sessions. And if there's more need than that, we can talk at that time about adding sessions to the week, or perhaps covering other time zones, right? I think it would be really good to have some live coding sessions that were during normal waking hours for people in the Eastern Hemisphere. And so that's an example of something we absolutely need. It's overdue to build that. And maybe this will give us a reason to start experimenting with some of those during the Mesh PBL.
And short note on this, I think this is important also for being transparent and also on the proposal scope. We saw, for example, with MeshJS, ideally we would like to have this community spaces where we can have an easy outreach to Cardano developers already. So the best people who have this are Gimbalabs, Playground, live coding. say, and we came up then actually through the ideation as well, through the last weeks, to say, can we charter, actually, can we sponsor these events and allocate budgets from MeshJS proposal to Gimbalabs? Because if we would have to do it ourselves with MeshJS, it would cost us much more time, because we are not as experienced as Gimbalabs. We would have a much lower quality because we have not that much experience as Gimbalabs in this. I think this is really also something what I think is very important to recognize, that this community spaces which Gimbalabs developed over the last years have a lot of value to other developer projects as well. And this is quite a beautiful piloting this year as well, and say, hey, wait, this is nothing what we should take for granted. This is running usually for free. Gimbalabs is not being paid for this. They're doing this for years, adding a bunch of value. And we run into this problem that everybody takes it for granted, thinks, oh yeah, they might have been funded for this. No, they are not. And we have to make a clear point here as well and say, oh, okay, when we have budgets available, we have to start to reward really important and valuable formats and defaults as well, if we want them to survive. Because if they survive, other projects will be able to benefit from them.
Thanks, Felix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Thanks. We've been talking a little bit about this product that some of us are building called Andamio, which is the software that we're going to use to deliver the course, and also to then help learners transition to being contributors. And so it's very exciting to be building that. Mesh PBL gives us a place to kind of beta test that software that we're building. But the simple fact remains that there's always going to be a need for continuing to create content and run sessions like this. And so, you know, I'm sitting here as a founder of Gimbalabs, but also kind of I'm a passionate contributor to this new project called Andamio right now. And it's important because there's overlap between those teams for us to start explaining what the difference is. And one of the ways we're starting to recognize it is, okay, Andamio is the software, and Gimbalabs can still provide support for building out content to fill that software if people need it, right? Building out the course content, doing some kinds of train the trainers, or just leveling people up in their ability to build or to run live coding sessions. So that's coming, and everybody here obviously will be invited to contribute to that. I don't know where we're going to bootstrap Gimbalabs from. The business models for Andamio are much easier to dream up because it shares a lot with a traditional startup. But the business model for Gimbalabs has been impossible to create. We're 3 years in and we still don't really have one, because because every time we try to build one, we lose kind of what we're trying to do here. So it'll be fun to explore that and think about if there's a way to bootstrap a distributed consultancy of people who can support with content creation and educational facilitation. Looking forward to that. All right, should we take a look at these milestones together and see how we're doing, Felix? Can we just put each other on the spot and see how we're doing?
Yes, we are in delay. Wonder.
Let's see. I actually haven't looked at these in a couple weeks, so I have no idea if we're on target or not. But we're at the Catalyst Milestones website here. Felix already put the link in the chat, and it looks like this milestone is due in November, pretty soon, right? So I can click through, and this was the milestones are approved, but the work is not yet approved. Is that what the green means?
Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So let's look at some details. Milestone 1. What do we got to do here? Talk us through this.
Okay. First of the whole thing was at the very beginning already, we haven't been fully sure who will actually be project lead and manage the whole proposal and implementation. So the very first milestone was to set up a core team and the project management. I think there we have pretty much everything nailed out already, which is quite nice. Then setting up the Andamio instance. This one is still pending. We then had to create the course content. This is actually the most sneaky part, beautiful part of the whole thing. Plus the student learning targets. We have weekly sessions with MeshJS and Andamio team, where we start to outline the student learning targets already, which are usually represented in I can statements in this regard, saying, okay, we want to first provide what targets should the students actually learn? What do they want to learn about? What do they have to learn about? From this then we derive several modules and lessons. But really the key driver is really the student learning targets. We started to set up a GitHub repository already. I'm actually not sure, James, can we share it already? Or is it...
the current learning targets?
Yeah.
Yes, after we look at these, that's what I want to do next, is take a little dip.
Cool. Okay, then let's keep this. I post a link in the live chat then as well. Then to start Discord announcements and present proposal and implementation plans. We started this, but yeah, we can be a little bit more active there. But yet we don't really want to make announcement of announcements. So right now we are still in a lot of progress and nailing out the relevant stuff, and we don't want to hype people and say, oh, but you have to wait 2 weeks. Like, makes fucking no sense. Let's announce when I can actually really directly click on the link and directly jump in. Then the bi-weekly live coding sessions, we didn't start it yet. That's something what we could ideally start maybe next week and the week later. And the last one then is where you are participating exactly right now. It's a Playground session where we give some updates on proposal progress so far and have an open chat in with people as well to address questions. The milestones altogether, we divided the whole budget allocation of the whole proposal into the 5 milestones. So each of the milestones has a 20% budget allocation of the total budget. Milestones has to be, because what you can see here, for example, you see the approvals. Like mentioned, the approvals does not mean that the milestones are delivered already. Only the desired outcomes of the milestones has been approved, but not accepted yet. If you want to, and this counts for all the funded proposals in Project Catalyst Fund 10, once you complete the milestones, you have to submit a specific proof of achievement to each of these milestones, providing specific links. And there's then evidence of milestone completion, for example, in the third part, where you can see which links, which sources do we have to content do we need to provide in order to prove our achievements. And budget payouts are only made after the proof of achievements are accepted by the milestone reviewers in Project Catalyst as well.
Any questions to share on that? Felix, I can hear your voice going chick, chick, chick. So got this done, working on this bit, definitely deep in this. This one's started, and this one is happening, and these we've got to do soon. Not bad.
Oh, yeah. And I have to say what is really important as well, the so far execution of the proposal is really beautiful. It's just a pleasure to see how MeshJS and Gimbalabs comes together, and most things are just such a natural fit. there are no frictions, there are no discussions or yellings. It's just, it's like, it's meant to be, meant to be together. So from the coordination effort side, it's not that much stuff needed. Actually, that's something what is really beautiful.
We really have been growing up together. So in the late 2021, we ran our first experimental cohort for Plutus PBL. And it was just an experiment in saying, okay, what if we get a few people together and build some things, and we try to explain how building those things helped us learn some things. That's where we started. But Abdel Karim showed up about a month into that, and he was one of the founders of Mesh. So we started getting to know each other there. He is one of the best devs I've ever met. He's a magician, unbelievable. He's working full time at Emergo now, and as I understand it, has a few tricks up his sleeve. So we have to wait for some announcements on all of that. But in his early work there, we got to know each other, and you know, I was asking him for a lot of help thinking about, hey, what can we actually show in a web browser for all this work we're doing? And thinking about that led him to founding Mesh. And so he and Jingles met early 2022, started building Mesh. And yeah, we've just been supporting each other every step of the way. I've been one of the early users of some of the stuff they've built as they've released it, found a lot of bugs, asked them a lot of questions, and certainly have, for the last 2 years, been showing people how to use Mesh in the PBL courses. So yeah, this feels like a really exciting way to kind of come full circle now to applying what we learned together in both the dev sense and the teaching sense. All right, should we look at some actual results of our work? Oh, question from Stephen. Hey,
yeah, excuse me if I'm ignorant. Is Andamio built on JavaScript's React platform? So
Yeah.
is the kind of strategy to use Mesh to extend Andamio?
100%. Well, and it's going to go both ways. There's a couple of things that we want to build into Andamio and that we can't quite do yet because we need a couple of features to Mesh. And we already have one of them. One of the devs on the Andamio team actually made a pull request to the Mesh repo to add a function that didn't exist yet. And we needed it in order to build the transaction we were trying to build. It had to do with read-only UTXOs, right? If I just want to look at a UTXO in a transaction, but not spend it, that was possible after the Vassal hard fork about a year ago, but it wasn't yet possible in the front-end library. So Juan looked into the serialization library, figured out where it had to be added, submitted the PR to the Mesh repo. Abdel Karim approved it. And then as soon as that was officially published, we were then able to keep building with that new transaction or that new function that was added. So it's beautiful to see, right? The need emerging from somebody who's building an application, the need being delivered upon by actually, in this case, a builder of that application, right? And now this is a function that other people are going to be able to use. So hope to see that pattern continue. It's a nice cycle to be in.
Yeah, that's great. I can imagine a PBL on how to build a PBL.
I don't want to announce an announcement of anything, but yes, that's what we're going to try to achieve with Andamio PBL as we release that. All right, so where we start, obviously software is important, and it's going to be so exciting to put this link in people's hands. Like Felix was saying, right? When we actually have this link and can send it to people, that's going to feel really, really good. And obviously building a UI is something that you can choose to work on forever, right? Nobody designing websites is ever perfectly happy with the end result of their, well, John, have you ever been perfectly happy with the end result of your work?
About half an hour. Yeah.
Nothing else. Yeah, exactly. Right. You always realize there's another thing I could do, right? That's ongoing work. And the truth is, design is really important for getting people in, right? All of us will stick around for long enough to maybe read a few headlines if the design is good enough. And we can't be overwhelmed. We have to be able to find our footing in that space that the site is creating. But it's not what keeps us around, right? What keeps us around is the experience we're having, right? The user experience. So you can call that UX, and it's possible to build UX. And of course, right, an entire generation of Web 2 developers read books about how to addict people to their applications. And they made sure that UX didn't let us go, and that it was always on our mind, and that we would keep checking our phone once every couple of minutes, right? Like we know there's design decisions you can make for that. And those are not the ones we're looking to make. What we're trying to do is build something enduring that makes people want to come back and keep learning. If we're successful, people will learn a little something from the course we're building. And because they had that experience of learning the first thing, they're going to feel empowered and really want to learn the second thing. And you can see how that becomes a virtuous cycle. And the way we do that is not as much through slick interfaces as it is through how we set up experiences for people. And the way we do that is with learning targets. So we're going to look at these not in any kind of user interface right now, but in a JSON file. Don't worry, non-devs, don't let it scare you. Everybody can read this, okay? This is called JSON, stands for JavaScript Object Notation. If you've never seen it, this is a common way that data is sent between applications on the internet, okay? And most programming languages have the ability to read data that looks like this pretty efficiently. And so all we're doing in this course.json file is we're setting our intentions. These are the things we're going to teach in this course, okay? Now, a course is organized in a list of modules, right? So this JSON file has a course title. No surprise there. It's got a team of authors, and we'll eventually have the individual names right here. These square brackets, if you're not familiar with these usually represent a list in many programming languages. So you can see that's possible to have a list of authors right here. And what that means is I could write, you know, individual names after this. I could separate, I could say Mesh. Oops, those be quotes. Gimbalabs, right? Harry, Tom, etc. Okay. So we can have lists. And that's exactly what we have underneath. These modules right here, this is also a list, but this time it's not just a list of strings. It's a list of these things in these curly brackets, which on my screen are blue right now. Okay. Now these are called objects. That's what the O in JSON stands for, JSON Object Notation. So every object is wrapped in these curly brackets. And the first object in my list of modules is the first module. But it follows a similar structure to the whole course, right? What does a module have? It has an ID. We put a number on it. It has a title, something descriptive. And then it has another list inside of that, this time of student learning targets. And Felix mentioned these before. These are the I can or I am or I have statements that describe to learners what they're going to learn and be able to do in this course, right? We're not just going to have people jump in and start showing them stuff. We're going to say, hey, welcome to the course. this is what you're going to learn here. Any questions so far? So these are the learning targets for Module 101. And one of the things we've accomplished so far is over, how many times have we met so far? I think we've had 3 meetings as a team. Okay, so we've been coming together just over these last few weeks. But what we've discovered is that this process of writing learning targets and organizing them into modules together is a really powerful way to build alignment among a team. And a lot of us knew each other already. But by starting with this conversation, it gave everybody a really clear grasp of what we're trying to accomplish. I'm really excited about that outcome. So that's Module 100, and you can see it continues with Module 101, which has a different title and its own learning targets. And then 102 looks like this. We're going to come back and spend a little bit more time on these, but I'm moving quickly for just a moment because after Module 102, we have some unfinished work. You see the next few modules all the way down to 207. All these have so far are titles. And these are not even the final titles. It's just a rough list of the things we want to accomplish later in the course. And by putting these things here, it helped all of us start to think about, okay, we're going to get people to the point where they can learn a lot about transactions, minting, right? A lot of people want to know about minting. Before we teach people about minting in Mesh, what are the things they have to know already? Well, here's the list, right? You need to know a bit about transactions before you mint because minting happens in a transaction. Okay, that's why Module 201 comes before 202. But before I can learn any of that, I need to be onboarded to Mesh. And so any module that starts with a 100, 100, 101, 102, we call these informally our onboarding modules. There are, hey.
Hi, how are you? So I have a question. I have been a Cardano developer for like past 2 years, and I have a lot of experience in like minting assets and everything. And I started using Mesh around about 2 months ago, and I have experience in that as well. But my question is, what I want to learn is about the Plutus, the contracts. So where can I learn the coding for the contracts?
Excellent. And so
Because that is the main thing that I don't find any content for.
And so you've already onboarded yourself, like you know the basics of writing a little bit of Plutus. You've already explored Mesh, and you want to go deeper into Plutus.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. The Plutus PBL course that we currently offer doesn't go as deep as it needs to go. We've spent a lot of effort getting people up to the point of understanding where Plutus fits in the dev stack. And I know that you've been to some of those live coding sessions and you've already started looking at that course.
Yes.
But one of the next things on our development agenda is to improve the kind of advanced Plutus content. And maybe even, I know Claudio is here on that call, but we might even be able to, what I'd really like to do is invite people to contribute to that project in a similar way to the way that we have a team of contributors building this one. And then if you can imagine it, right, the Plutus PBL course, that becomes one entry point to give people a whole bunch of background knowledge and concepts that they need. And it exposes people a little bit to Plutus, a little bit to Mesh. But then for the advanced stuff, we can send people who want to go deeper into front end over here to this course that we're outlining on my screen right now. And then I think the best case scenario would be to have another deeper dive course into Plutus where we really go into the nuts and bolts of everything that Plutus can do.
Okay, understood.
If
Because
we put
these
out, if we put out a
these
call
courses are
for,
really good for onboarding.
yes,
And
right.
to be very honest, these were the courses I took for my onboarding. So
Right.
those really helped.
Can I count on you to contribute to the advanced Plutus course when we're ready to build it?
Absolutely.
All right, good. Well, we're going to be loud about that when it's time to start building that one. That's probably more like the beginning of the new year at this point. But yeah, definitely a place we're going. Thanks.
And quickly, there's a good question from Stephen in the live chat as well. So not all, he asks, open quote, so not all course content will be ready in milestone 1. Some of it will be added in subsequent milestones. That's actually a good question. I think from right now, as it stands, that we have the idea to define already the certain set of modules in the first milestone. Though what is very likely, I think, is that new models will emerge over the next weeks and months as well as contributors start to build their knowledge, builders build their stuff, and they come in with their own ideas, which actually happened already last week, that we had one contributor from Singapore coming and said, hey, I have this stuff here. So he literally created his own module and said already, hey, can I do this? And I think there's definitely, we want to do a little bit both, give already a rough outline on what we want to achieve, but we want definitely keep the database open so that people can submit even their own models later. We will have to manage a little bit the amount, that's for sure, but yeah.
That's the big question, right? If we do this right, I guess that's the third category. I mentioned that we are aiming the course at developers who want to build an application, developers who could contribute to Mesh, but even creators of additional content, people with great ideas for projects that people could learn from. And we've been talking about this in other venues, right? It's one thing to start a course, but to maintain it over a long term, that's also a different kind of work. And so maintainers and people who update courses, these are all experiences or all experiments that we want to be playing with because we recognize all those needs. But we also recognize that there's enough of us to start building these things, right? If we could create the systems, yeah, I think we're going to discover some exciting things about how we sustain this kind of network development. Okay, so we have these learning targets, and these ones, we had an interesting conversation about module 100, and we wrote these learning targets more to represent prerequisites. Okay, what we're imagining is that a lot of people are going to find out about Mesh because maybe they already know some JavaScript development, but they want to understand how to use their skills to build on Cardano. And for those people, they're going to look through these learning targets and they're going to say, oh yeah, Node.js, I got that. React, yeah, I've heard of that. Okay. Oh yeah, show me how to integrate Mesh into my project. This is going to be your typical getting started guide that you might get for any library out there that you can install into a project. This one is going to be easy for people who have been playing with Cardano for any amount of time, but maybe this one would be the challenging one for the experienced dev who's brand new to Cardano. All in all, these are 4 things that you just have to know before you can really even get started. Then the rubber starts to hit the road, right? And so these are our first 2 projects. Right? We want people to understand that Mesh can help connect a wallet. CIP30, that stands for Cardano Improvement Proposal. And number 30 is the one that outlines what a browser-based wallet needs to be able to do. So before there was Nami and Eternal and Flint and Typhon and help me out here, right? Whatever else there is, right? all of those wallets that you can install as a browser extension are following a standard for how that wallet talks to applications in a web page. And that standard is defined in Cardano Improvement Proposal number 30. But you see what's happening here, right? I'm zooming in on just a little bit of language in this learning target and maybe teaching a tiny little lesson for anybody who wasn't aware of what the hell is SIP 30. We want that to happen when people read learning targets. Learning targets are language delivery mechanisms that when people read them, they say, okay, I almost understand that learning target, but tell me about this bit right here, right? And as we move through a course, we can get more and more rigorous once we've developed trust with students and they know we're not going to pull the rug on them by saying we're going to teach you this, but then doing something else entirely. We can start writing learning targets that are a bit more advanced, and students can expect, okay, if I see a big scary word in a learning target, I know I'm going to find out what that word means by participating in this lesson. Okay, so a lot of the vocabulary you need is built right into the learning targets. And then here's the project we're going to do. Right? We're going to show people, hey, look, you could see information about your own wallet in your own application. And here's the project. We're going to show you how to build a component that lists some assets. And we actually rearranged this one a little bit. This is not our latest changes. I have to grab those, but you get the idea. Okay, so we write these learning targets. We had a couple of really good conversations to get to the point of what you see on the screen. And this is where we ended up last Thursday, is with these 3 100 level modules and the learning targets inside. As I already mentioned, we have not even drafted the learning targets for the 200 level yet. What we decided as a team was, hey, let's experiment with this process and build these 100 level modules first. Let everybody get the feel for how this all works. And then when that's done, now we go through the process again and we write the learning targets and the titles for all of these 200 level modules. And then we jump into creating the content. The good news is we have early evidence that this system is really working. Here's my evidence. We left off right here last Thursday, just 5 days ago, with this list of learning targets. And we all just gave each other a task. Everybody, hey, jump into Discord and drop a note about which lesson you want to try to write. Okay. And over the last few days, I hope it's here. I thought I had the latest, but now I'm having some doubts. Let's see. What we started to do is dropping content into this course directory right here. Okay. Stephen, see you soon. You can see there is a directory for each of the numbers of these modules right here. Okay, 100, 101, 102, I can see those. And I can see the rest, but these ones don't have much yet. Like 201, it doesn't have any learning targets yet. So there's no lesson pages here. Okay, but there were a bunch of learning targets in these first 3 modules. And so where we ended last week is that we just had placeholder files for each of these. Let's see if we've made any progress. So this is lesson 100.1. It's about the first learning target. We got some brand new content from Z. And then in number 2, somebody didn't attribute the content to themselves, but this wasn't here a few days ago. Z took a stab at 100.3. 100.4 is still ahead of us. We have some loose notes about an assignment here, and we need to write an overview. And you can see how we keep going. Here's a lesson that needs to be written. Those 3 need to be written. 102. I don't think I have. Oh, you know what? I think some of the changes are on a different branch is the problem. I thought I had more to show for this today. Oh, Valdrin's been adding some. Let's try this. All right, here's some new content, for example, on Valdrian's branch. But what you can see is this is just a few days after making this plan, and we gave ourselves a deadline of Thursday. So by Thursday, everybody's responsible for making at least one contribution to the lesson content here. And it's really happening without any day-to-day accountability. It's just this group deciding they want to do this thing together and everybody taking on a little bit of the work. What the learning targets give us is a structure for that. We've already agreed on what we need to teach. Because that agreement is made, now everybody can just start jumping in and finding their place. And our project management tools right now are Discord and GitHub. That's all. People are just writing quick little notes to each other on a channel in Discord, and then they're jumping in and making their commitments. I'm really excited about this pattern. Tavo, I think we heard similar from you. This is kind of what you're seeing at the D-Work PBL. And I'm excited to keep trying to find out if this is something that we can recreate on other teams. Anybody have any questions about this?
Would just drop the message in the live chat if you could show some Plutus PBL example on how the front end looks like in a few minutes.
We can do a little tour. Yeah, we can do a quick tour of that. Sure.
Awesome.
So
I think Tivo is
go ahead.
Because I think Tivo is really keen to spam the video recording already to some people. Tivo, give us some time. It's still work in progress.
I know. Oh man.
No time.
This is I know. I wanted us to deliver all this stuff already, and we're working as fast as we can to have it ready enough to really play with. And Tavo, I know you and your team have been going through this same process. What's exciting to me is to hear that it sounds like you're discovering some of the same things about how this process of writing learning targets first is helping all you guys to kind of know what the expectations are and jump right in. Am I getting that right?
Yes, I would say that. That's maybe an assumption, because I actually never asked, like, what do you contribute? That could be a case that they kind of know what's the intended output, and that kind of gives it easier expectation.
So yeah, that's our process. That's our progress. Thanks for allowing us to share these updates. I'm not sure. Can we just make people watch this whole video at Town Hall? Is that how it works? Just kidding.
Yeah, we give them 1.5 hour video. It's like,
we'll give them
yeah, you fucking go.
Content, don't forget that.
Okay, so yeah, so the content is being written here, just like JSON files. I gotta be honest and, reject it if you want to, but my goal is to demystify JSON files and markdown files for everybody. I don't think enough of us use enough of our computers, especially if your only interaction with technology is through a web interface that somebody else built and whose data is stored God knows where, right? You're not using enough of your stack. And a lot of us have learned to use a little bit more of a tech stack just by interacting with Cardano in the first place. I truly believe that this has to be considered basic literacy. I don't care if you never learn Haskell. I don't care if you never learn JavaScript, but all of us need to be able to look at a JSON file and a markdown file. We just have to do this. And we have, like, I want people starting in kindergarten. So that's, my long-term reason for being here is I think blockchain has something to say to education. And I'm trying to discover what that is, okay? But I was already working on this mission before I got into this industry, just trying to demystify tech and to raise our general level of tech literacy. Because if it's a black box to you, if you don't know what you're doing, people are going to take advantage of you. Look at, I don't even need to tell you exhibits A, B, and C. We all know what they are, okay? So that's why I'm showing you this right here in a code editor, but this is called a markdown file. It's almost as easy to use as Word, and personally, I would rather write documents here than in Microsoft Word. I feel full control of what I'm writing. So anyway, that's what we looked at so far, some JSON and Markdown. Thank you for your bravery, if you're not a dev, going there with us today. But eventually this does end up in a website that people can be kind of familiar with. And so we have an example. The original prototype for what we're building is over here at PlutusPBL.io. This is, I mentioned this before, Plutus project-based learning. This is the course that we launched back in March. This was the 4th iteration of such a course and the first one that we released on our own software. You can get started. You can read a little bit about the course. You can review the list of all of our modules, right? Look at this. This should look familiar from the JSON. We have a number for each module. We have a title for each module. And then we have learning targets for each one. Here they are. And when I jump in, I can start learning these things, moving through these lessons. There's video content. There's written documentation. There's links to some useful stuff. So all that content we were just looking at, this is where it's going to end up, but it's actually not going to look like this. Because again, this was the prototype. It's going to look like, just kidding, it's not going to look like this. But what I'm showing you right here is the prototype of, this is just our work in progress for Andamio. We're not trying to style this thing yet, but we're just making sure we have all of our endpoints set up before we keep going. So course, here's our list of learning targets for that PBL course that Tavo mentioned before. This is going to teach people, A, how to use Andamio, but more importantly, how to teach with it, how to write learning targets, how to write supporting assignments and lessons, and then how to build content. For example, in some of those tools I was just showing you, Markdown, right? So this is here, this is all working. We're happy with that. Navigation, lessons, they're not going to look like this. There's no real formatting here on the Markdown, but this is the stuff right here from inside of those Markdown files we were just looking at, okay? And it's the fun part is to make this look pretty once you get all the data going to the right places. So that's ahead of us. And then there's a bunch of smart contracts running under the hood. And this might be a topic for the future, but we're distinguishing between contributors and learners in our system. Okay, so learners can be onboarded and all they can do is they can commit to assignments, right? So here's an example of an assignment that somebody with a learner token can commit to. We might have information about each learner. It could look, well, better than that. And then we can see when people are committed. Yeah.
Okay. Could you elaborate quickly on how do people actually log into the platform? Because I think Andamio has a really powerful structure running in the backend there. How do I log in and how can people verify that I actually completed a lesson or a module?
Yeah. I don't know what wallet I have hooked up right now. Let me make sure that it's one. I think this one has at least some of it, right? So really, this is actually the Connect Wallet button from Mesh. It's a little buggy right now. But when you first start our Plutus PBL course, what's the first thing we have you do? We have you connect a wallet. We also show you how to change to the test network, so you're not really risking any real ADA. And then soon enough, we have you mint a token right away. But when I connect my wallet, there's some visual feedback right here on the top that shows me, oh, I've mastered this learning target and this one already, but not this one yet. And then over here, we show you that actually our application can't be certain about everything. Our goal is not just for you to turn everything green. It's for you to master these learning targets, be able to do these things. And there's nothing you can show us across the internet that proves to us that you know how to safely store your keys. Can't prove it. I could disprove it, right? If I could get you to hand your mnemonics over to me, I'd be like, you failed that one, right? But the point is there's certain learning targets here that the goal is not to create a hierarchy where you have some finger wagging teacher say, you better show me how to do this, right? Our goal is to build autonomy, self-sufficiency, and agency, just like blockchain does, right? And learning targets help us do that. So one of the things we show people is this, right? Hey, we think it's great that this can tell you that these two are green, but really it's up to you to know that you know these things. But yeah, that's the login process. And then once you have a token hooked up, a lot of other things can happen. We have no servers, no back-end servers. We have to host the website. Looking forward to doing that in collaboration with another Catalyst Fund 10 proposal, this one from the TX Pipe team that's building distributed web hosting. I think it's urgent for us to move that direction as they start to build it. But yeah, there's no server here. There's no user information stored anywhere. It's just you mint a token and you start making progress through the course. Felix, did I cover everything there? Yeah. And once you have that, right, like that's where this information is coming from. This is not in a private database. All of this information that's populating this table right here is on chain. We'll use a little bit of IPFS and a little bit of Nostr in this application. But in general, a lot of the blockchain functionality is going to be happening on Cardano as the layer one. Tavo, is that a sufficient overview of UI just to get people excited enough?
Yes.
Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to finish these transactions. Again, we have our to-do list of everything that needs to be built right here. A lot of these are live, some of them are not. But once they are, we're going to make it just pretty enough for people to use. And that's where the Mesh and the Governance Guild PBLs will be delivered in the very early version of this thing. And that's all for today. We did a little bit of Catalyst reporting, got a little high-level overview of what's going on with Mesh PBL, looked at our milestones, looked at learning targets, the process that we've been through so far to write some lessons, and finally finished with a little overview of the front end. But really looking forward to next sessions. Now that we got the first one out of the way, we're going to do this again. What do we have? Not too long. Yeah, about a month from now, November 28th, we'll do another reporting session. And then one more following closely in December. Plus, look out for a couple of those live coding sessions. Thanks, y'all. No playground next week. A lot of the Gimbalabs meetings are being canceled next week. In part, I know that some people are traveling to different summits around the world. But also, it's just nice to take a break from meetings and have a little chance to do some deep work sometimes. So whether you're traveling or doing deep work, we won't be hosting community meetings just for next week, and everything will be back. What's that? The week of November 6th, we'll be back on regular schedule. Dave, I can't make it to the summit this year. You going? No, you just said you're not going.
Yeah, I'm not going. Yes.
Can't make it, but we're going to keep pushing Felix about these plans to do something on a hillside somewhere. That's what we really need. We need a hackathon on a mountain. How's that sound?
Clean your tents, some food, and a sleeping bag. And we meet at the forest.
I don't think I own nice enough clothes to go to Dubai. I got to be honest. I'm not sure, but I can do mountainside.
To be very honest, Dubai stands for so many things I'm profoundly against. Hypercapitalism and all this stuff, and I would feel so deplaced seeing myself in Dubai. Like, nothing against Dubai, you're great people, simply not my people.
You just triggered some kind of YouTube algorithm by saying that. You better watch out.
Oh,
It's
Wow,
a
we cut
serious
it out.
opportunity, though. Like, if we set up the Burning Man equivalent of the Cardano space, people will come, and it'll be the people we would love to hang out with.
So I would like to make that a very serious goal for 2024.
Yeah, I feel you with that.
Good things, team. Thanks for all the listening today. I hope that our upcoming sessions can be have a little bit more of a demo, but also more interaction. But it's good to get this first one out of the way and just do a lot of sharing to situate us all in this work. About 90 minutes from now, got the S3 study group doing some similar work that's less technical and more about organizational building. So we're trying out these same processes of writing learning targets and imagining what projects could be for organizational structures. So maybe we'll have a report out on that sometime soon in this space. Any thoughts or final questions before we break for today?
Final remark for everybody watching this video and get interested about MeshJS or Gimbalabs or Andamio or whatnot. We've put a bunch of links in the video description. James will ask you as well to throw me over a recording that you can upload it to MeshJS YouTube as well. We'll add some timestamps for easy navigation through the video. And stay tuned. Stay tuned. Lots of good stuff to come. And if you want to join and to build and to contribute, every much is pretty welcome. You don't need titles, you don't need qualifications. We don't give shit about the color of your skin, about your political or sexual or religional or whatnot background. We are craftsmen, and everything what counts for us is to build together for a hopefully better future and the generations coming after us. So if this speaks to you, then you are with us, and happy to see you around.
Umi, this video is posted already on YouTube Gimbalabs. If you just search for Gimbalabs on YouTube, you'll see a whole archive of all the prior playground meetings, live coding sessions. And Sean, I know I can't wait to hear more. I know that the proposal passed and that they're building it. And yeah, they want to incentivize SPOs to run the service. But I'm excited. I mean, I feel like that should be the default way to deploy an Andamio instance is on that service. So I hope we can get there. Wonderful. Let's see if we can get the TX Pipe team in talking about that too. That's going to be really cool. It's going to be very, very cool.
Very nice playground session.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for doing this experiment, as always, with us. Catch you soon.